Good morning, and welcome to our panel on the evolving role of women in sports in Saudi Arabia. We bring together a distinguished group of experts, each offering unique perspectives on the progress, the challenges, and opportunities shaping sports in the kingdom and beyond. We represent diverse voices today, with experiences across grassroots initiatives, youth engagement, elite motorsports, international leadership in women's sports, and many others. We also share a common belief that sport is a universal language and a powerful force, an idea that resonates widely in Saudi Arabia, and we'll certainly hear more about this on our panel today. As you all know, Saudi Arabia has undergone massive transformation with the launch of Vision 2030 across many sectors, and sports is certainly no exception. Today, we have over 300,000 registered female athletes, thousands of women coaches, mentors, referees, sports doctors, a growth of 150% in this short amount of time. We have over 30 women's national teams, over 70,000 girls playing in our schools' football leagues, and many women sports heroes, some of whom are with us today. So I'd like to kick off our discussion with Lisa O'Keefe, who's the Secretary General of the International Working Group on Women and Sport, the world's largest network dedicated to advancing gender equality in sports. Lisa, welcome. We know that countries are unique, communities are unique, the paths that we choose are unique. But appreciating that, what would you say are the building blocks that nurture a sports development ecosystem?
I think when we think about the system around us and that sports system, it's really important for us to, first of all, move our thinking away from just focusing on how we change the behavior of the individual, whether that be the girl, the young girl or the woman. Often I see examples of sports where the whole focus is on fix the women, that the sports system is fine and that we just need to help women access sport or girls access sport. But the reality is, in life, we don't live in a vacuum. We don't make decisions in isolation. We're absolutely shaped by the world around us. And in sport, the sports system around us. And that goes well beyond clubs, because actually the system that influences the choices that we make and whether or not we feel able to be active and play sport actually starts with the social environment around you. So what is normal behavior? What is encouraged? So really thinking about how society views women and girls sport is really important and sends a really powerful message to women and girls about what is acceptable. And then the organizations and institutions around us, they're the ones that provide the opportunity. So it's so important for us to focus on what is it those organizations and institutions offer, and what are they doing to make sure that all women and girls can access those opportunities. And then when we go further than that, the actual physical environment around us, is it safe? Is it welcoming? Is it a place and a space where, again, we feel able to move around comfortably, whether that's walking, cycling, running, or into various different sports. And then my final point around the ecosystem is policy. Because the policy, of course, always dictates what's available to us and what is encouraged and what is not. And I often travel the world and I see sporting systems where the policies run at odds with the priorities or what people are trying to do on the ground. So I guess that's my simple message is, let's not just focus in on how we change the behavior of women and girls. Let's focus in on that whole sporting system and how it interacts with each other, because that's what creates sustained change.
I want to turn the discussion to what's being done on the grassroots level in Saudi Arabia to really galvanize an interest in sports at an early age. So I want to turn to Katy Storie, who is currently the Director of Sport at Newcastle University and the first female chair of the National Rugby Union Sport Advisory Group in the UK. Katy, you've been in and out of Saudi several times over the past few years. What are some of the grassroots elements across sports development that really stood out to you over this time?
I think there's two different levels. I've been fortunate enough to deliver here, as Nedaa said, over the past 3 years. And every time I come out here, every sort of 4 to 6 weeks, I see change, positive change, just rapid change. And we work with women of all ages. But when we work with women in the community who are of adult age, what we're seeing is because perhaps they haven't had access to such opportunities in the past, they're thirsty and hungry for the access, and they'll literally try any sport. You put on a session, a workshop, and at the end they're always asking, are we going to play sport today? So we might have an education session around leadership. They want to try a new sport. And we've actually been fortunate enough in taking, rugby, dodgeball we have in the room today. They've been great partners with us, and new sports to these women who have massively embraced them. And that's not about performance, that's about them trying new things that they haven't been able to access and really making the most of that. And the other part of that kind of age group of women is about they're desperate to connect as a network with a shared interest. So they're a community because of sport. They're a community because they want to be active, and this isn't about performance. And I think the second kind of trend that I've seen at grassroots level is in the youth in Saudi. And I was fortunate enough to bring over Becky Langley, who's the director of women's football at Newcastle United. I brought her to Riyadh, to Princess Noor University, another one of our partners, about a year and a half ago. And she delivered at actually one of Lamia's sessions, her regional talent centres, to an indoor training session. She delivered to the 6 to 12-year-olds and the 13 to 18-year-old girls. We began with the 13 to 18-year-old girls, and they were great, really keen. But when you look at the standard compared to the UK, as you would expect, they were of a lower standard than our 13 to 18-year-old girls. But the fact that they were there, the fact that their parents had brought them, and the fact that they were training 3-4 times a week was the biggest change I saw. But the most significant change were the 6-year-olds. So when Becky did the session with the younger girls, that normally would be a more challenging session for a performance coach. It's like herding cats sometimes, those of you that have coached younger children. The talent there was unbelievable. So there was one cheeky 6-year-old girl, ringlets in her hair, big bow, pink bow, that kept nutmegging, I think that's what you call it on rugby, I'm not football, kept nutmegging Becky and just grinning as she did it. And Becky said afterwards, she's really good. If she was in England, we'd have her on our programme, without a doubt. She is going to be good. And she said, if they get this right, with girls like that, with what they're putting in from a resource perspective, a support perspective, they're going to be world beaters. And that was amazing to hear that from somebody who actually knew about football, whereas I think anybody could nutmeg me. But the other part of that was her father had brought her to the session. Her dad was sitting on the bleachers and cheering her on, as you would see. And I'm not saying as you would see, I spoke to Annie earlier, that it's not necessarily what you'd still see in the UK. You might not see every dad supporting their daughter, but to see a dad with his daughter there, pushing her with the hope that she'll play in a World Cup one day for Saudi Arabia was probably the biggest change I've seen around grassroots. So you really see the future of Saudi women's sport in the youngest age group now, which is just fantastic to see.
That's incredible. Yvonne Harrison is the CEO at Women in Football. Yvonne, you were able to grow a community of 11,000 members, 83% of which are women. You've done a lot of research around sports and football in particular. What are some of the data-driven insights you've come across relating to building a comprehensive and supportive ecosystem?
Thank you, and hello everybody. So yes, Women in Football, we have almost 11,000 members now. The community is free to join, and one of the significant things that we've done, actually taking some of the learning I've experienced when working in grassroots sport that Lisa led at Sport England previously, was really getting to grips with data and insight and using this as a base to build evidence and ultimately influence the system that Lisa just spoke about then, because we can all take our elements of our own responsibility, but actually if the policy doesn't align, if the system is fighting against equality, then we have a problem. So we've done an annual survey now for the last number of years. Pre that, it was every 3 years as Women in Football, and that is effectively looking at the state of the football workforce. So our remit is very much around kind of how do we take people that participate in sport and become leaders, as we heard about in sort of the opening sort of speeches. And the data is very, very interesting, because what it tells us is there's a huge amount of optimism from women working in the football industry in England and globally. So just under 20% of our members are right across the world. However, the environment within which women are operating in football can be incredibly challenging. So, for example, 89% of the female respondents said that they had experienced discrimination based upon their gender whilst working in football. That's a lot of women that are experiencing that. And alarmingly, of the women that report gender-based discrimination, 60% said that no action was taken by their employers around that, and 16% said that they were not even listened to. So this isn't something that employers were taking seriously. Now that's frightening when we think about how exciting it is to be involved in sport and how much people aspire to work within the industry. So going back to Lisa's point around the system, we have to ensure that the football industry is creating an environment, an inclusive environment where women feel valued, feel their views are going to be heard, and can actually thrive, not just survive within the sort of world of sport. And the biggest challenge that women reported to us in this survey was around male dominance being a really big factor. So 71% of women cited this as the biggest issue they saw in terms of women advancing in the football workforce. And I think what was interesting in the opening address and with Vision 2030 and reading some of the recent reports around women's football in particular, you know, the opportunity to sort of start from scratch and not have years and years of tradition and history, you know, connected to the sport is incredible. And as much as it's very important for people like ourselves and in the room to come and share our best practice and our learning, I think in time we'll be able to learn a lot as well, because we are unpicking the system and trying to retrofit what great looks like, whereas here you have an opportunity to do that from the very beginning, and I think that's hugely exciting. So for us, having the data allows us to influence the system, the key stakeholders, whether that's the government, whether that's the leagues, whether that's clubs and employers specifically. That's a really important point. And I guess the final thing that I would say, and again, just a shout out to the males in the room, is that, you know, many of the decisions that are made in the football industry and in sport are made by men, because men are the ones that are typically in these rooms, and we're seeing more women come into leadership within football and within the industry, but still it's nowhere near enough. We don't have gender parity when it comes to boardroom conversations. So the allyship and that active kind of participation in the conversation is such an important thing, and I would just like to say, don't underestimate the difference that you can make to your female colleagues, to the culture of an organisation, to the way that that organisation is led, by using your voice and bringing women into the conversation, because that diversity of thought is so paramount to creating change.
So Katerina Falida is the technical director of Qadsiah women's football team in Saudi Arabia. She's a UEFA Pro license holder, certified coach educator, and she played on the Greek women's national team. Welcome, Katerina. You've been in the kingdom for about 1.5 years, and in this short amount of time, you were able to grow club membership from 14 to 120. And just recently, your girls brought home the U17 Football Cup for the kingdom. How were you able to do that? What was your secret?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Sabah al-Khair. I know numbers are very attractive for everyone, but success has many parameters, and one of these parameters was that me and my staff, and of course our international players coming from all around the world, we felt really, really welcome, more than welcome, in Qadsiah, in Eastern Providence, in this beautiful country. And I think that gave us a really, really big motivation to work hard and try to achieve all these things till now. We came here 18 months ago. I'm leading this project for women's football in Qadsiah, and we had to establish the women's team and the academy, female academy from scratch, literally from scratch. The road wasn't easy, as you know. The pool of the women's football players was and still is limited. So our first thought was that we have to establish strong fundamentals, foundations for the future. So we had to invest a lot in our academy. And our priority was to create a safe environment, an educational environment for all the girls, and also make Qadsiah an attractive football destination for the girls of the Eastern Providence. We wanted Qadsiah to be the football home of every girl that wanted to play football. So, of course, we had a big support, a massive and huge support from the club and Aramco that owns the club. A really big investment to our infrastructures, staff. We wanted to bring really experienced staff, to bring also role models. It's also important for us to have a lot of female coaches or staff members in our teams that made the parents feel more comfortable. And of course, we wanted to engage also the families. That is very, very important. We had some concerns at the beginning. Some parents, football it's not a sport for girls. They had to overcome many obstacles or stereotypes. So we wanted to make our club an attractive destination, as I told you, and of course, we create an amazing environment, giving to the players everything to excel in Qadsiah. So now we have already a full professional team with 25 professional players, and the women's team reached the cup final a few days ago. And of course, as you mentioned, our under-17 team won the under-17 league. But apart of that, we have 5 more teams in our academy, 120 girls. Every day plays football in Qadsiah. We have a lot of pitches. I mean, we provide really good infrastructures to our players, clean dressing rooms, separate dressing rooms for every team, exclusive facilities for our women's teams. It's just something make the girls feel really, really comfortable, and the women's. This is our dream here, and we want to give the opportunity to every girl in Eastern Providence to come and play football with us, no matter the skills. Of course, we want to be on top, and we want to make them to be part of our vision, to make them have the dream that in the future we are going to play for Qadsiah women's team, or we want to represent Saudi Arabia. This is something amazing because you can feel it every day in the training center of Qadsiah. We have a record number this season of 14 players, youth players in the youth national teams of Saudi Arabia, 7 players in under-20 national team and 7 in under-17. So that's a miracle for us, starting with 14 players last season, having 14 players in the national teams this season. It's something great, and that shows the hard work of everyone, staff, people around the team, the management, and we are very, very happy that we are part of this project. Our vision is also aligned with Federation vision. We want to give the best players to them, and we want to see, of course, Saudi Arabia women's team to compete in the highest level in Asia, and why not in the world. I think this country can make everything come true. And of course, in Qadsiah, we are here to invest in women's football, and not only in women's football, because a part of football, our club has 11 more sports for females and 20 for male. So we are a multi-sport club, invest in women's sports in general, and we know how important it is to bring the girls in sports. That's from my side.
Excellent. So I want to welcome Tanya Kutsenko, FIA Sport Clubs Development Consultant and the first Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Specialist. Tanya, can you give us a glimpse into what the FIA is doing to encourage and support the development around the world in this sector?
Thank you very much, Nedaa. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here for the very first time. And as it was said, my mind is blown with what I see with this fantastic event. And the FIA is very, very proud to have all the events, the pinnacle of our sport present in Saudi Arabia in very first time. We are the member federation. We have 149 sports clubs pretty much in every country, and our vision is officially to create affordable and accessible sport worldwide. We want motorsport in every country. We want to make sure that every boy and girl can have the opportunity to participate in sport, be it karting, be it rallying, circuit racing. With 149 members, you may imagine the plans for each country would be very different, and that is the first pillar of our activity, is to go in every country. We are in daily contact with our member clubs, and we are helping them to put together the plans, the strategy and the plan, and match that plan with the resources to make sure that in every country there is a strategy and a plan to run motorsport, and we support it with the human resources, with the expertise that we have, with financial resources. The investment in grassroots development even last year was 10 million. This year we have the new fund of 750,000 dedicated to development of motorsport in by small and medium-sized clubs. So strategy and plan is, of course, a success to grassroots. Our sport is also very different. It requires hardware. And unless we make the hardware accessible and affordable, we cannot grow the numbers, we cannot have young people involved. So we've developed and released the blueprints to our federations, to our sport clubs, to create to build affordable cross cars, which is not just a hardware, but it helps to create the whole infrastructure around it, and to develop local talent, engineering talent, mechanics, team managers, to have a vibrant community in every country to support the national championships. Karting, of course, most of the drivers we see today on the F1 grid start with karting, start very young. So we've launched last year a global karting plan, and actively helping the ASNs worldwide to tap into it, to develop the appropriate form of competition, to give young people the opportunity to start in sport, to then practice the sport. And our biggest, as you know, the female participation in motorsport is unfortunately low, but we're talking about the competitors, the drivers. To change that, we need to make sure that the access is there for as many girls as possible. We need to give the opportunity. They try, hopefully they will like it, and then it's our job to make sure that they stay and there are pathways for them to strive and to develop. We also, it was mentioned that the environment, the ecosystem is very important. So one of our latest initiatives is the global campaign against online abuse. It's really affecting our sport. It makes athletes leave the sport. It makes the parents wary about participation. And we felt that it's our duty to start the coalition, not just for motorsport, but for all the sports out there. Today, United Against Online Abuse Coalition brings together 8 governments, 8 international sporting federations, other international organizations to address this issue together. We're only 1 year old, but making a lot of progress, and we believe that by creating a safe sport online, particularly for women, because we've launched our second barometer study last week, and unfortunately racism as misogyny is still one of the biggest problems out there. So we need to keep sports safe both on the field and online. So that's what we, in few words, that's what we are doing globally to support grassroots development.
Thank you, Tanya. Mike, I remember the first F1 hosted in Jeddah. I took my 5-year-old son at the time. He was completely fascinated by everything he saw. The cars, the speed, the noise, and how loud it was. And he looked at me and he said, "Mama, how can I be an F1 driver?" So, we've seen a lot happen in motorsports in Saudi, with also Yazid Al-Rajhi winning the Rally Dakar recently. But what are some of the initiatives in place to develop Saudi drivers, Saudi engineers, and the talent that's needed across that value chain? And for us to shift from being spectators of the sports, which is great, but also to be active contributors to the sport, and maybe seeing the first Saudi F1 driver. You tell me.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. First of all, one of the unfortunate truths about our sport, Nedaa, is I hope you have very, very deep pockets for your son to make it to Formula One.
His dad is in the audience.
Look, Saudi Arabia, I think, is in a very fortunate and unique situation at the moment in the context of motorsport and creating a level playing field. First of all, as you've identified, here in this market, we're very lucky to have all of the world's best events here in Saudi Arabia. And truthfully, I can't think of another country in the world that is able to host the very best motorsport events in one single country. To give you an example, my background is I used to work for the Australian Motorsport Federation, and now and that's a very mature motorsport market. It's a long-established motorsport industry and has one world championship event. Here in Saudi Arabia, of course, as you have identified, we've had Formula E last weekend, we have Formula One, we have Rally Dakar. Later this year, we'll also host our first round of the FIA World Rally Championship. So in the context of creating a level playing field for men and women, we're very fortunate to have those halo and aspirational events for people to see their heroes, but also bring awareness to the sport. And from a federation point of view, it enables us to deliver messaging around how people can get involved. The other thing I think that this market really has going for it is motorsport is still relatively young here in Saudi Arabia. And so what that means, and we talked a little bit about the ecosystem before, some of those tightly held positions or preconceived ideas around female participation in the sport don't exist here, believe it or not. My background from Australia, it's a very old federation, it's got a long history of running motorsport. Breaking down the barriers of female participation in markets like that, believe it or not, is much more difficult in my view than what it is here. Our Formula E event last weekend, and I should point out, by the way, we're lucky to have the world's best official here in our presence, motorsport official, Carol Armstrong, who was nominated or awarded the FIA Most Outstanding Official of the Year last year in 2024. Carol, welcome. Thank you for coming. Carol attended our Formula E event last weekend as an official, and just observed to me that there is a lot of female officials that we have here in Saudi Arabia, and many of those filling quite senior positions. And in fact, just over 45% of the total officials that we had last weekend at Formula E were females. Wow. And I think that's quite a good statistic. And certainly with my background in some of the more mature motorsport markets, you don't see that anywhere else. So I think that just goes to the point where a lot of the preconceived ideas and a lot of the tightly held positions that have been traditionally held by men don't exist here, and that's not creating barriers for female participation here in the sport. The third thing I think that's really fortunate and unique here in Saudi Arabia is, while we do have a lot happening at the top level of the sport we're still in the process of building the sport from the grassroots up. And that means we can start with a clean sheet of paper. And it's true of many sports, but certainly in motorsport, there's many, many ways in which females can be involved in our sport. At the very top level, just to give you an extreme example, a Formula One team, say like McLaren or Ferrari, employs around 4,000 people. They have 2 drivers. But within those employees, they have lawyers, they have accountants, they have marketing and sponsorship teams, engineers, mechanics, food and beverage. So motorsport, you can get involved in the sport in pretty much any industry that you are involved in. So if you want to be, your son may not make it as a driver, but perhaps he might be a lawyer or an accountant or a driver. But in any walk of life or any skills or experience, you can get involved in our sport. And here in Saudi Arabia, as we begin to grow the sport from the grassroots up, certainly in Saudi Arabia and in the region, and as we begin to build that motorsport industry, more and more opportunities will become open for participation in general, but also for females. So I think it's a really exciting and unique time for being involved in the sport here in Saudi.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Lisa, coming back to you, a lot of times people associate sports with professional athletes. But in order for the young talent to become these professional athletes, we need to start at a young age. So what are some of the thoughts that you have around sparking this motivation at that young age and this feeling that, you know, the kids say, I can do that and I want to do that, and maintain that spark over a long period of time to help them get there?
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge amount of research in this area into what it takes to create opportunities which, I guess, inspire young people to be active, but be active throughout their life. And we know there's some real fundamentals in there. One of them is absolutely obvious. It's got to be fun and enjoyable. I mean, I know it's obvious, but sport can get a bit too serious sometimes, too quickly. So we've got to make sure it's fun and enjoyable. It's also got to be really meaningful to that young person. So they've really got to take value out of taking part in that activity. Now, for some, that will be because they want to win, and they want to win at all costs, and that's what absolutely drives them. But that might not be the reason why a young person wants to be active and take part in sport. It may be that they want to have fun with their friends. I was at a club yesterday watching a group of children with Katy at Taekwondo, and there was so much laughter and giggling and little breakout groups where they were just clearly enjoying being in that moment with their friends. So we have to create sporting opportunities that children really value, and also we've got to help them understand at an early age why being active is really important. Not from you should do it because it's really good for your health and you've got to do 60 minutes a day. It's not about that. It's about them really recognizing how it makes them feel and what they get out of it, so that they're making that connection that being active and moving more is really good for me, and at various points in my life, that's my go-to. And I guess, you know, it's kind of keep going with what you're doing here, because you're creating now the foundations of children and young people who have a very different relationship now with moving their bodies and being active, and that's what will create a generation of young people who will go on to become adults for whom being active and playing sport is just normal.
Yeah, great. Katy, I know that you've been to Saudi a few times, and oftentimes when people come to Saudi, they usually start with, you know, the bigger cities, Riyadh, Jeddah, maybe Eastern Province, but you ventured to areas outside of these 3 cities. So is there anything that comes to mind, you know, any experiences that you can share with us?
Yeah, so as you said, I first came here, and we're very fortunate to be funded by the British government to deliver the work that we do. And I had never been to Saudi before, came here for 5 days, ended up being asked to to kind of lead on this women's sports program. I said, yeah, fantastic. Put the bid in, set it up, came to my next visit to do some scoping, and just realised how big Saudi is. It's absolutely massive. I had no idea. I kind of thought in my mind, we'll just do it in Riyadh, because that's where everyone talks about Riyadh in Saudi. And actually, very quickly went back to the embassy and said, this can't just be Riyadh. This is going to have to be in Dammam. I was told again, yes, Dammam's the place to be, and then also Jeddah. So brilliant, great. 3 venues, pretty well spread. And then you start to think, actually, there probably are other places that we could go, but we need connections there first. And that's how the world works, right? So in Jeddah, we had a couple of women who were driving down from Medina to Jeddah to attend our workshops. They were there every single workshop. And one of them, I'm pleased to say, is in the room today, Dr. Siem from University of Prince Mugrin. And she kept saying to me, you must come to Medina. People say a lot of things to us and we think, yeah. And then she kept saying, please come, please come. So I said to the embassy, there's a lady keep asking me to go to Medina. And the embassy originally said, well, we don't really do much work there. I think you might struggle to get women interested in sport there. I'm not convinced that they would have a venue that you could work in. You know, it's not somewhere that we've been. Dr. Siem said, no, you can come to the university. I'm working with women at the university in sport. I'm training them as coaches, as volunteers, and they're students. They're studying sport as well. And they're going to go out into the community and be coaches and leaders. Please come and do a session with them. I said, okay. And the embassy were great. I said, yep, go on, let's go and do a session. And I remember thinking, do I bother to take another deliverer with me? Because there's probably going to be, which would be fine, 3 or 4 women there, which is absolutely fine. But I'm glad I did take my other deliverer with me, because there were 101 women turned up to our session, which is the largest workshop we've ever had in any of our programs. And we were blown away. And that was only about 50% of those that had signed up. So those 101 women that turned up, as I said before, were really hungry for sport. They were hungry to be involved in what we were doing, but more significantly, they were a community within Medina that were focused around sport and active well-being. And it turns out that there was always, so we set a WhatsApp group up in every venue that we deliver in, which is just for women around sport, for them to share anything going on in the community around sport. You know, that's great. And I said, we want to set up a WhatsApp group. And Dr. Siem said, no, we already have one. There's 240 women in this WhatsApp group. And now she told me the other day there are 500 women. So when we talk about the kind of demand for sport here in Saudi, and we assume in those bigger cities that that's where it is because that's where often the infrastructure is, actually looking at those, and I'm fortunate enough now to work in Alula as well, another growth area in Saudi, is understanding that the women there and what you'll find there is often smashing those perceptions that we have very much. We do have that entrenched in us in the West, and even in this country, thinking that if you're in a big city, you're more likely to be, I don't know, more active, more interested in something different. That's absolutely not true. So I think one of the passions that we're going to build into our next kind of funding stream is to look at the other cities of outreach that we would like to get to in Saudi, to offer those women the chance to become a community. And also, sport isn't just about participating. I think I've said this before with Lisa. If you come and watch a sport, you're part of a community. You're less likely to be mentally and socially isolated. You're part of a group, you have something in common. Just because you're not participating doesn't mean sport can't impact you positively. And I think providing those environments and safe spaces for women in all of these areas where sport is simply a vehicle is also extremely powerful.
Incredible. Thank you. Yvonne, earlier you talked about very interesting insights. That was sort of more on the macro level. From the research that you've done, are there any unique thoughts or lessons that you'd like to share for Saudi in particular?
Yeah, I guess the biggest lesson from our research and working with our community and actually the football stakeholders is that for the sport to change and progress, we need women in these leadership positions. That's really important. And not only just for football, but for sport more broadly. And it's also important to consider that in the context of not only women's sport, but men's sport too. So our membership, as an example, the majority of members work in men's football. These are women working in the men's game, and we'll obviously see more women now coming into women's sport as that infrastructure is growing. And I think the opportunity to create pathways for people coming into the sport, whether, you know, and I absolutely agree with what was just said there, you know, you can watch sport, play sport, work in it. It should be your choice, and there should be equality of access in doing any of those things. So this needs a strategic approach, and obviously Vision 2030 very much sets that out for Saudi Arabia, and it's really encouraging to see. But that leadership piece is so important. So the governance of sport and football and how that comes together, it's critical, and it's a challenge globally, actually, in terms of women's representation at the top level and in governance. And that's something that we have, as women in football, really sort of lobbied for with our Open Doors agenda, which was released after the Women's World Cup, and some of the incidents that sort of happened there. And we don't want to be in a position in football whereby the only option women seem to have is to write an open letter to the press to say that, you know, there is a bad situation within their coaching team, or they're not being heard around this, or there's abuse online or in person and that type of thing. So calling for better governance within sport and within football in particular is something that we're really passionate about, because if you get that right, you change the system and everything else sort of flows from there. So representation of women on boards as a minimum of 30% is really important. Women are half of the population, so it actually should be 50-50, but we're so far removed from that as a sport that we have said, you know, every federation should be looking at that specifically. Having independent non-executive directors in these boardrooms, again, so important to challenge the thinking and to ask the right questions, because we can often find in sport there is groupthink because people have played the sport, they've come through the sport, they're passionate about the sport, but they don't necessarily bring perspectives from outside of that. And we've heard, and I'm sure we'll continue to hear throughout the day, you know, the commercialisation of football and women's football in particular. It's so important to bring those different perspectives into that, and ensuring that we have open recruitment processes. Sport is a very small world, actually, isn't it? And it can be quite interesting how, you know, I've been approached many times about joining a board, and that's not going through an open process. That's, hey, you know, we think you'd be really good at this. Should you have a conversation, and will you do that? But what that means is the opportunity for everyone to have access to that potential opportunity and come through that in an open and transparent process doesn't exist as much as it should. So that's something we're absolutely calling for. And also term limits within boardroom situations. So you can have a refresh and you can bring in new thinking. And I think here, you know, given the population and how many young people there are in the population, that's really exciting to bring new and diverse thinking into those boardroom situations. So for us, the data is all leading to, if we get that leadership right, if we get the governance of the sport right, then things will change and we will create progress. I think the other thing that we're seeing as a global trend is, particularly around women's sport, is investment into women's sport and the valuations, you know, of sports teams, and how that's driving sort of change, and female athletes. So to your point of having, you know, 17 representing the national team is incredible, and the power of female athletes on social media is surpassing male athletes, actually, because people are interested in not only the athlete, but their lives and the things that they're passionate about. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity around women's sport, the commercialisation of women's sport, and the power of the athlete and fan engagement within that. I think Anne-Marie spoke earlier about the fans of women's sport are more likely to buy and to sort of commit and to show brand loyalty. So that opens up really interesting opportunities for commercial brands that are wanting to get involved in the women's sport space. And we're seeing sort of some recent evidence talking about why people are investing in women's sport. And actually, brand image and reputation is a really important factor. 77% of brands were saying that the reason we're getting involved is because it enhances our brand image and our reputation, and it's increasing our brand awareness and brand loyalty. So there's huge opportunities, I think, and the data both from within women in football and what we're seeing in our industry, but also that macro environment in terms of women's sport more specifically, is a really exciting space.
Great, thank you. Well, none of this would be possible without drive and dedication. And Katerina, when you and I spoke a few days ago, these two words came up frequently in our conversations. You know, whether it's around individual athletes or family members, but any kind of inspiring stories that you can share with us that really show the drive and dedication that you've been witnessing with the Qadsiah?
Many stories. Every day it's a story, a different story. I have to say that you know, football can have a big impact in the society and can change perceptions, stereotypes, and the most of the stories that I can share with you are related with the families. And without them, without the families, without the parents, we cannot reach our goals. We know that girls, the families are very important, are related by their parents. And I have seen a massive change since last season till today, especially from the fathers, that they are very, very supportive, and it's something for me, not that, how to say, common, because I had heard stories from athletes, especially the older athletes. You know, my father is not supportive, my mother is supportive, my father's family doesn't want to be involved in football, and now I can see the change. I can see the change every day. We have so many fathers every day outside of our training pitches waiting for their daughters. And we have an amazing father that he drives every day more than 3 hours from Al-Aqsa to bring her daughter in our training center to train. Wow. And this is something amazing for us. Of course, we take care of the cost of transportation, but driving every day more than 3 hours, it's something insane. That means that the father and the family supports the daughter, and also this player is part of the under-17 national team, football national team, and they are very proud of her. And they show us every day that they are proud of her, and they are proud that belongs to our club as well. Of course, a few days ago, we had the cup semi-final with the women's team, and one young player, we have in our squad one young player, and the whole family traveled from Hobart to Riyadh to watch the game. So more than 10 people came to Riyadh to watch Munira to play football, to play in the cup semi-final. That was something very important for her, and of course for the family. Yeah. And so many other examples like this that makes us to feel that we have a very important and serious role here in Saudi Arabia and in our club. We need to engage more the families, and we're trying to do that. We organize quite often events. We open our doors to them just to feel comfortable and understand that our girls in safe hands, in a nice environment, and they have the opportunity to achieve something great, because for them it's something great. To have the opportunity to play football and participate in national teams. I think these two stories, it's really, really motivating, and drive us to work hard or harder and provide to the girls the right environment and bring them in football. That's from my side. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Tanya, I want to ask you about what the FIA is doing in terms of balancing, or let's say, I mean, motorsports have been predominantly male-driven, right? So we have seen over the recent past these initiatives launched like F1 Academy, which is phenomenal. But are there any other initiatives or efforts that you can share with us that will sort of help us out with the gender balance?
Yes, of course. There is a lot that we do to try to change the state of play. And Yvonne particularly mentioned a lot about data, about research. I would say that this is something that we value and we take very seriously. There is a lot of research going on in the sport, more than 70 safety-related projects every year. And we're still asking you would think the obvious questions. Are those cars, are they fit for and built for average person? Are they built for male? Can female be competitive using the same cars, or they need extra adaptations? We probably should have asked this before, but we are looking into it now. We are thinking of how, again, the hardware that we rely on so much, how the hardware can be better serve the purpose to be the sport where women can be safe and competitive, because we do want them to win. We do want them to participate, creating opportunities. Again, we want motorsport to be in every country so that the families, the girls can try it. Because if it's not on your radar, you would never know how exciting and thrilling it is. You should have the opportunity to encounter your first local track. We, of course, trying to increase participation in our commissions and committees. Most of the federations function as commissions, committees. We have also in making sure that the voices from different parts of the world are heard, because there are different barriers, there are different scenarios, different culture of motorsport, different perceptions. And it's important that we have women in leading roles, in decision-making roles, and good representation in every discipline. And also I would, lastly, as Michael rightly mentioned, and that would be the situation for every sport. We have our athletes, they are our biggest asset for every federation, but there is enormous potential for participation. You can find a good crossover between every profession and every sport. So there are roles as, there are lots of opportunities for volunteering, like Carol represents here, volunteers and officials that our sport relies most. We have hundreds of officials, 700 officials for a Grand Prix event, more than any sport. And there are different, all sorts of jobs, any role you can think of. We need to make sure that women know that they can, and we should create the environment that is very welcoming and that is safe.
Thank you, Tanya. Mike, we know now motorsports definitely growing here in Saudi, and I think one of the big game changers would be developing that homegrown talent. We see, Rima Jafari, trailblazer in Saudi motorsports, but how is the federation supporting the next generation of Saudi female racers?
Yes, I mean, we've all agreed creating heroes is so important for selling the messaging for our sport. And here in Saudi, I mean, Rima Jafari, as you mentioned, is a great ambassador for our sport. She competes, and keep in mind, motorsport is one of the unique sports where men and women compete on equal terms, and Rima is certainly doing a fantastic job. We ran a GT race last year, a 6-hour GT race, and in her class, Rima finished on the podium for that event. So, of course, is a terrific ambassador for female participation in our sport. Danya Akil, there was a photo of her earlier on. Danya is of course another fantastic ambassador for motorsport for us here in the Kingdom. Danya actually was the fastest in her class on one of the stages this year in Rally Dakar. I have no doubt that in the coming years, Danya will compete in a T1 Plus or an Ultimate class in Rally Dakar, and certainly will be challenging the leaders for an outright win in Rally Dakar in the coming years. We also have F1 Academy. I mean, we're very fortunate here in Saudi as part of our Formula One Grand Prix to host a round of the Formula One Academy, which of course is all about promoting young female drivers and getting them to the very highest level of our sport, which is Formula One. Last year, Rima Jafali, we placed her in that race, which was funded by the Federation and with the support of the Saudi government, and she did extraordinarily well. We'll be doing that again this year with a new driver that will be announced very soon. But it's not only drivers that we need to promote into motorsport, as I was indicating before. I mean, some of the biggest heroes we have in our sport aren't drivers. I mean, Adrian Newey is an aerodynamicist and a car designer and is one of the biggest and most famous names in the sport. So for us as a federation, it's about opening doors and creating opportunities for females in all elements of the sport, whether it's as a designer, as a strategist, as a lawyer, or whatever, as I said before. And with the help of the FIA, of course, there's the FIA Girls on Track program, which is all about increasing female participation in motorsport and creating awareness. We're very active in that here in the Kingdom, and of course we ran that program in collaboration with Formula E last weekend in Jeddah. So there's a huge amount of enthusiasm and support to create opportunities for females in Saudi Arabia, and helped, as you said, by some of the heroes that we already have here.
Great, thank you. So we have just a few minutes. I want to do one last round of questions, and Katy, maybe we'll start with you. But if you have one message to Saudi, what would it be?
I think for me, it's keep doing what you're doing. And it sounds like a really strange thing to say. It kind of incorporates everything we've discussed today. But we made an awful lot of mistakes around the world in women's sport, and we're still making them. And I know Lisa works globally. You know, I've had the fortune to work somewhat globally. And don't let anybody tell you how it should be done. Find your own path, but learn from our mistakes. We're happy to share them. And we're happy as a group, I hope, to work together to find some collaborative solutions, but just keep going. So, yeah.
It's quite similar answer. I would like to say together we are stronger, and keep going all together.
Thank you.
For me, in addition to the collaboration piece, which I think is hugely important, and sport actually does that really well, I would say listen to the experiences of women, the good and the bad. Just make sure you really tune into that and listen.
I would say hold your nerve. Because the longer you invest in sport, the pressure comes to win medals and to win championships and to excel on the elite stage. But you're already winning. Just today we've heard stories of how sport, you're unleashing the power of sport and physical activity in the Kingdom, and you're changing lives. And you're changing lives of those taking part, but also of their families and the generations to come. So hold your nerve, unleash the power of sport. Winning will come.
Sport has been pretty Eurocentric. It has changed. You are the center of the sport. You have the most fantastic events, the power, the dream, the capacity to build it. It's yours. We're all watching you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can't really add to what's already been said. I mean, obviously here in Saudi Arabia, we need to learn from others' mistakes, and we're very fortunate to be able to do that. But I think my observation, having been here just on 12 months, is look out. I think there's huge opportunity, there's huge progress, and as I mentioned before, a clean sheet of paper here, so look out.
Great. So today's conversation has made one thing abundantly clear. Sport is not just about competition. It's about transformation. It's about creating opportunities, breaking barriers, and redefining what's possible. This is just the beginning for us. The story of women's sports in Saudi Arabia is being written now, and it's a story of excellence, resilience, and limitless potential. The next generation of female athletes, coaches, and leaders is watching. They're ready, and we can't wait to see how they'll shine. Thank you to our incredible panelists for all your insights, and thank you all for being here today.